Hi everyone. This video is brought to you by the new motion picture Back to the Future 4. See the flick that the New York Times is calling a great way to spend an evening. Glenn Close and Damon Wayans revive the popular 80s franchise. Back to the Future 4 is now in theaters. Hey guys, it's Mikey B and Marky J. We're back for week 6. We had some good tips for week 5. We just wanted to keep it going for you. So let's just jump right in. Mark, thanks for being here. We're going to start with the biggest surprises of week 5. Anything that you just that you thought was surprising?
Mikey B, thanks for having me, man. Good to be back. Week 5 in the books now. A lot of surprises week 5. And boys and girls out there, the judge is back to give you advice to help you. Hopefully you all won last week, riding on the coattails of my advice, mine and Mikey B's advice, if you will. Week 5, looking back, biggest surprises. We called a lot of them, but there were a few I don't think anybody really called. The first one for me, Ed Dickson. He was the highest scoring tight end in week 5. He caught all 5 of his targets for 175 yards. That's the most he's ever put up. I think that surprises no one that he's never put up that many yards before. The only time he put up over 75 yards before that was week 10 of the 2011 season, which coincidentally was also the last time he put up over 500 yards receiving on an entire season. So don't expect that to happen again. He is a guy I am fading. Let one of your other owners in your league pick him up. He should not be duplicating that performance again this year, if ever again in his career. Number 2 surprise for me was Will Fuller. He scored 2 touchdowns in week 5 after scoring 2 touchdowns in week 4. He is not going to sustain that rate, but that was a huge surprise to me, and he is back on the map. He's definitely a wide receiver 3. He's a streaming option and a dart throw possibility in DFS formats. Going to be tough for me not to address the Odell Beckham injury, so let's just get right to that. I think we're all shocked by what happened with the New York Giants just collectively losing 3 of their wide receivers to injury, 2 of them for the season in Odell and Brandon Marshall. The Giants are 0-5, and they are just looking bad. So that's a surprise to me. What's wrong with the Oakland Raiders, Mikey B? They're on a bit of a skid here. Obviously, Derek Carr was out. They had E.J. Manuel, but they just look bad. And Amari Cooper, I just was looking into this here, but over the past 3 weeks, he's only caught 4 passes for 23 yards. At this rate, he's on pace to finish the season with 41 catches for 377 yards and 3 touchdowns. You know, frankly, that might be worse than Ed Dickson, so huge surprise. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, they looked great to me. So those were the surprises. I don't think that it surprises anyone that the Eagles are for real, but the fact that they just blew up the Cardinals, I mean, they just put themselves on the map as the class of the NFC East. So to me, those are the 5 storylines that impressed most in week 5.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. And we'll be getting into the OBJ stuff a little later, so stick around for that. Let's look ahead to week 6. You had a few guys that you just think have some great matchups. And again, some of these may be obvious, some may not be so obvious. So who are you thinking this week?
We touched on him before, Mikey B, but Deshaun Watson, he's playing at home against the Cleveland Browns. He gets it done with his arm and with his legs, and he's playing against a weak opponent. You like Myles Garrett, what you see out of him now that he's on the field, but Deshaun Watson's a guy that I'm rolling out there, and he's the QB for me that I'm looking to start the most anywhere I can. Kareem Hunt, he plays against Pittsburgh. They're giving up the 3rd most points against opposing running backs. And Leonard Fournette, the Rams are actually giving up the most points against opposing running backs. 2 rookie running backs, 2 guys that you're obviously trotting out there every week as RB1s at this point. But those are guys to me who I'd love to plug and play in DFS formats. Devin Funchess, the Eagles are giving up the 2nd most points to opposing opposing wide receivers. He's averaged 9 targets a game over his last 3 games. With Greg Olsen out, he's really building rapport with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's rolling now. I think Devin Funchess is a definite guy you want to play in DFS formats. And if you've got him in season long, plug him in and you'll be rewarded. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, we all know the Pats' defensive woes so far this season. I mentioned him last week as a person that you should go out there and grab as a tight end streamer. He's got a good matchup here. He's somebody that I like at tight end. And then defense, we'll touch on this a bit more later, but the Broncos are hosting the Giants at home. The Giants have absolutely no offensive weapons left. They're going to be relying on Roger Lewis, Shane Vereen, Evan Ingram. It's just going to be a mess out there. And with the Broncos' tough defense, they to me are the defense I most like. And then Houston, they're playing at home. We already mentioned Watson, but they're playing at home against against Cleveland. So I really like their defense this week, even without J.J. Watt, who's now looks like he's done for the season. And then the Ravens are playing at home against Chicago. We saw Mitch Trubisky last night. Looked good for a rookie, but they're going up against a rookie. You like what the Ravens defense has done so far. They're another defensive streaming option this week.
All right. So some more bye weeks, or some more bye week woes for some people. So, it's always easy to say, hey, you should pick up so-and-so off waivers. He's a good ad. But sometimes you're just kind of in that area where you're not quite sure who to drop. So do you have any guys that you think maybe on people's rosters that can go in order to, fill a lineup this week?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are a few teams on bye, not as many with offensive weapons that you really love as last week, if I've got that right. But Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard are two running backs that might still be lingering on the ends of some rosters in fantasy leagues. I think both of them need to go. Joe Mixon is getting the work now, and it's happened 3 weeks in a row. He's really the guy in Cincinnati. Jeremy Hill's done absolutely nothing. Gio Bernard's just not getting consistent enough touches. So if you need space and they're still on your roster, get rid of them. It's a pipe dream you're holding on to. Bernard, you want him to get the PPR relevance. You like that he catches balls out of the backfield, but Joe Mixon's going to be a 3-down back, and there's just no point in holding on to him. Definitely not Hill. Terrence Williams, he probably he shouldn't be on your roster. This is to those that don't know better apparently, but Terrence Williams is a guy on bye right now. He's just not worthy of roster of a hold. And then any Seattle Seahawks running back. I don't want to go through each and every name there, but it's congested. Nobody's really emerged so far this season. Chris Carson had, but we all know what happened to him. So for me, I think that holding on to Seattle Seahawks running back is basically just going to be an excruciating experience until somebody emerges, and it's not worth holding on to somebody through these bye weeks. So if you've got any Seahawks running back, feel free to let them go. All
right. Let's move on to questions. Last week we heard from Garrison, our buddy in Delaware. This week, Bill Cooper. He's a listener and a watcher in Wyoming. He says, "Hey guys, love the show." He says Odell Beckham Jr. was my wide receiver 1. He obviously goes down for the year. What should I do now?
Bill, thanks for writing in. I know you're a big Back to the Future fan, so looking forward to that flick as well. For me, Roger Lewis, I just touched on him. He's not a guy that I am expecting much, if anything, from in Week 6 against the Broncos. But this guy got into legal trouble in high school in Ohio. He was all primed to go to Ohio State and ended up going to Bowling Green. He blew up at Bowling Green. This is a guy that almost won the Bolitnikoff Award for Best Wide Receiver. As a senior in 2015-16, he came into the draft. This is his second season now. But he was undrafted free agent by the New York Giants, and he entered a really crowded receiving corps. They had Victor Cruz still. He didn't get a lot of go, but he was kind of, to me, sort of like Victor Cruz was when Victor Cruz was on the Giants the first year. He kind of did something in the preseason, and then you had to wait a year for him to really kind of land on the radar. Roger Lewis had a crowded receiving corps last year, crowded receiving corps this year. It's a lot less crowded now with Odell Beckham and Brandon Marshall going down. I think Roger Lewis could actually be a wide receiver, a low-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the way. I know that sounds crazy, but go look up his tape on YouTube. Check out his highlights from college. This guy can flat out ball. If he'd gone to Ohio State, wouldn't have shocked me if he had come out of the draft ahead of Devin Smith. I don't know where he's at these days. I think Roger Lewis shows you who the real talent was coming out of Ohio in last year's NFL draft. So go out there, scoop him. He shouldn't cost you more than a few bucks if you play with auction dollars. And then another name, I know that we've talked about this guy again and again and again, but Josh Gordon. I don't want to jinx anything here, but to me, Josh Gordon is a guy, a speculative ad. He's worthy of a speculative ad because you've got this guy who, anytime he's been on the field, he's been a wide receiver 1. He just can't stay on the field. and little rumblings out there. He gets out of rehab. There's a lot of talk about him, applying for reinstatement. Hasn't happened yet. But just about a week and a half ago, he was spotted in Cleveland. If you can look this up on the internet yourself, he was having chicken and waffles in Cleveland. And I'll tell you, well, what would he be doing there in Cleveland if he's not there meeting with the Browns? So the Browns are desperate for wide receivers. If you're desperate for wide receivers like the Browns, I'd say go out there, spend a couple bucks, add Josh Gordon if you can fit him at the end of your bench. Might be rewarded.
All right, and we have one more question from our friend Frazier. He wants to know, what do you do with Adrian Peterson now that he's an Arizona Cardinal?
Put him in your lineup. I don't want to jump the gun here or anything, but if he's on waivers right now, he might be the top ad this week for me. Obviously, after Jerick McKinnon, there are a couple other names out there, and by the time you see this, waivers will already have processed. But love what I see with Adrian Peterson going to the Arizona Cardinals. They've already dumped Chris Johnson. They have a power running attack. I see him doing a lot of damage between the tackles, even behind the Cardinals' woeful offensive line. I was really disappointed. I know you were too, Mikey B. We talked about Adrian Peterson. We thought he had a lot left in the tank still, but just wasn't going to get the opportunity in New Orleans. We actually touched on in our last episode that Adrian Peterson would be a good candidate for a potential trade. Well, we were given that. He goes to Arizona. I see him being an immediate RB2 / possible flex, better in standard leagues. And if you own him, I'd consider marching him out there this week. They're going to give him a chance, and I think he's going to do something with it. I think he's angry. He's going to run angry, and he's going to show you why he's a future Hall of Famer. So go ahead and plug him in, and if he's out there and somehow, I don't think this is possible, but if he's somehow still out there by the time you see this, make sure you go grab him because he could be somebody that could make quite a difference for you heading near the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, lastly but not least, some buy low, sell high candidates. Who do you think you should target or trade away this time of year?
We talked about Will Fuller earlier as a big surprise. I don't like guys that do things that are unsustainable because in fantasy football you want reliability. You're not going to be able to rely on this guy, a slot receiver for the Texans, cashing in on 2 touchdowns a week. I think he'll be lucky to find pay dirt 4 more times this season. He's pretty much a brick-handed guy with ability to take the top off of opposing defenses. He's more of a Ted Ginn type. If you could get somebody to pay more than he's worth, I think that Will Fuller is a guy you can sell. There's news out of Indianapolis that now Andrew Luck might not play for another month. It really sucks, but T.Y. Hilton just had a good week. To me, he's another guy that you can look to sell. Sterling Shepard is he's on the Giants. The opportunity is going to be there. He's wearing a walking boot right now, though. It could be a little while before he's back. And to me, if Roger Lewis builds some rapport with Eli Manning, it could become Roger Lewis and Evan Ingram show with Shane Vereen taking a lot of the work, actually. So if Shane Vereen's still out there, go grab him. He might still be available closer to the end of the week. They'll need pass catchers. Sterling Shepard, you might be able to sell him high on people thinking that the Giants are going to turn to him more than anyone else. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think he might still kind of hover, where he is, and those targets will go elsewhere. So he's a sell for me. And then Marshawn Lynch. The Raiders just look bad, and this week might be another pretty good week. I think they're playing the Chargers this week, so I still like Marshawn Lynch in Week 6. But over the long season, if he's not getting the work he needs to be a RB2, he's a guy that I might look to sell. He just scored a touchdown. If he scores again this week, he's a guy I might look to sell. As far as buys go, Des Bryant is seeing a lot of targets from Dak. It looks like he's starting to get going. He's healthy. Des Bryant's a buy for me. Chris Hogan, who knew that he would be the best wide receiver in New England? I've actually got both him and Brandon Cooks as buys. I think Brandon Cooks is going to emerge as the number 1 wide receiver there and as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. But Chris Hogan should still stay fantasy relevant. So I'd go out and try to buy both of them. You'll get Brandon Cooks at a lower price, though, so he's a buy low for me. I just wanted to throw it out there that Hogan is the real deal. Doug Martin looked fantastic against the Patriots. I know it's the Pats D, but it looks like he, by all accounts, is going to be the RB1 in Tampa. So if you can get Doug Martin, he's a buy for me as well. Joe Mixon, we touched on him. The touches are there. I think it's just going to be sky's the limit for him, and his trajectory is going upward. So if you can get in on Joe Mixon now before he really explodes, this is the 3rd week in a row we've touched on him, Mikey B. I think Mixon is a buy still. And then Kelvin Benjamin. We talked about Devin Funchess. I really like Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess, excuse me, but Kelvin Benjamin. Names are a little interchangeable, but not the players. Kelvin Benjamin, 6'5", is a big-bodied target with sure hands. I think that he is the better wide receiver, the better talent between the two, and I think the talent usually prevails. So it wouldn't shock me if the two kind of regress or progress toward their mean, and Kelvin Benjamin shows you why he's the best wide receiver in Carolina. He's a good buy for me because for the rest of the season, I see him being closer to a high-end wide receiver 2 and Funchess being more of a wide receiver 3. Both guys I like, but Benjamin is more of the buy right now.
All right, sounds great. So we just want to quickly mention, if you want to read Mark's articles, fantasyfirmblog.wordpress.com and on Twitter at MJFantasySports. And just quickly, we just want to let you know this video is brought to you by the new motion picture Back to the Future 4, starring Glenn Close and Damon Wayans. So go check that out. It's now in theaters. For Mikey B, Marky J, thanks for watching. Good luck this week.
Thank you, folks. Good luck.